Hi, everyone. Today, I have a very special guest, a guy who sold his last venture for $230 million. That's an amazing accomplishment. And he's now working on his next venture. He's just raised $4.2 million, and it's going to really change the way that we see work. So he's also a fellow IMD Business School from Switzerland, my MBA alumni. And so it's great to have Tony Jamous on the line with us. Thanks, Tony, for being on. And just for those of you, because you're now, I'm seeing you more and more on LinkedIn and being more social, but people that haven't heard of you, can you tell us your backstory before you started Nexmo and how you got into raising funds for it, and then we'll go on to where you are today later.
Great. Well, Amir, thank you for having me on the show, and hello everyone. So let me first introduce myself. So I'm a software entrepreneur, and my story starts in Beirut. I was born in Lebanon in 1980. And then I grew up there. I spent the first 17 years of my life in this very interesting phase of Lebanon. Was really in a civil war and exiting a civil war. But then when I was 17, I got this very unique chance to immigrate to France and study computer science. And that kind of got me plugged into, let's call it, the Western economy, and I was able to grow and develop by interacting with this kind of more evolved and developed economy. And 10 years ago, right after IMD, actually, we did the same school here with Amir, the MBA business school in Switzerland. And when I graduated, I started a business 10 years ago called Nexmo. That was an API business for building communication apps. And that business, I grew that business to $100 million of revenues in 5 years. And then we took it public by merging with a company on the NASDAQ called Vonage, and then tripled their market cap in 2 years. And I left back in mid 2018. And I decided more recently, mid 2019, I want to start another company, and I started Oyster, which is a distributed HR management platform that makes it easy for any company to employ anybody anywhere. And by doing so, by making cross-border employment a scalable reality, we are hoping to deliver impact in wealth inequalities and brain drain reduction. And if you think of it, why let's say an Android developer in Pakistan is paid 10 times less than the same job in Europe or in the US, is because they're in Pakistan, and because their company that is hiring them outside Pakistan doesn't know how to enable them to be highly successful in a remote setting. So our company is focused on solving that problem at scale.
Awesome. So let's start with your journey with Nexmo, and how did you come up with your idea? And so like people that are listening can see, okay, how does $100 million idea come? And how did you get your first seed investment? And why did you go for investment rather than bootstrapping?
Okay, so let's start with the first question, which is how do you come up with the idea? And I was fortunate before Nexmo to work for a similar company, but more like older generation player that does messaging API for messaging, but it was really before APIs were available. And one day I got assigned a project to build an API program, and customer loved it, but the company I used to work for decided not to pursue that business and that opportunity, and for me it made no sense. So when I went to IMD and spent a year learning about business and interacting with my colleagues, I was able to sharpen my views on what does it need to really lower the barrier for a developer to build communication application using APIs. And that was kind of the initial idea came from that 1 year iteration on the value chain, on the business plan, on the market. And then secondly is why did we go for funding? Because if you want to build a business in innovation, any innovative business, especially in software today, where you have very high speed of innovation, but also competition, you don't want to be at a disadvantage from other competitors that might be raising money. So I think that's number one, is really you want to be able to go very fast in building the product and the go-to-market. And if you bootstrap the business, that could work, but if you really want to have enough capital to go really fast. And that's one of the reasons why we've decided to fundraise. And we started with small angel investors, and eventually we didn't take a lot of investment in the beginning, and then we built some of the product, we gained some traction, and then we raised more money, and then the game comes. And the same game comes again and again. You kind of raise money, invested, deliver results, and then go back and fundraise again.
And can you talk about how much you valued the company initially, and how did you come up with that valuation? And then how did you convince the first early investors onto your product?
Yeah, so first, if you want to value a very early stage company, let's say an idea, it's very hard to value that because you have no financial statements, you don't have any method to evaluate the business. So essentially, you want to be in line with the market. So there's a market for valuating early stage companies, and that varies. There's a number of factors. There is the quality of the founding team, how big is the size of the market, how clear and credible is their strategy, whether it's go-to-market strategy or product strategy. So you have all these factors that enable you to assess, but then you end up always in the same range. Today, if you think about today, because the market have shifted massively from 10 years ago to today, and I've did seed funding 10 years ago and today, there's like 5 to 10x difference in valuation. So today, if you have the strong team, great product, great potential, and you're raising a seed round, you're not going to be valued at less than 3, 4, 5 million. Okay, that's kind of the minimum, because what really is important is the amount you're raising versus the valuation. So if you're raising, let's say, 1 million at 5 million valuation, then your dilution remains acceptable. But if you are raising 3 million at a 5 million valuation, then your dilution would be not acceptable, and that wouldn't set the company for success down the line. Nobody would come, no serious investor would come and invest in a company that is not majority owned by the founder at an early stage, right? So there's kind of this old mathematical concept that are common sense, essentially, that determine what is a relevant value range for an early stage business today. Okay,
so you raised money 10 years ago, and now you're raising it 10 years later. What has been the difference? And you just raised during the coronavirus thing as well, where I'm assuming you're not meeting people, you're doing it on Zoom as well. So there's no face-to-face, there's no handshake being done. How's that going as well?
Yeah. So what changed from 10 years to today, I think first there's much more investors in the market, and there's much more money that's been assigned to invest in early stage technology businesses than 10 years ago. So to give you an example, my first seed round at Nexmo, we raised $500,000. My first seed round on Oyster, we raised $4.2 million. Now, obviously, I'm a repeat founder, so you would expect to raise more money because of the track record. But still, I mean, there's like a big gap between 10 years ago and today. So the size of the check for the early stage have changed, and the amount of competition on the VC side has also increased. That's kind of one change. And secondly, also what changed is that now you can build businesses much faster than 10 years ago because of the maturity of technology platforms and tools for entrepreneurs, and the barrier to entry to start becoming an entrepreneur has lowered. So you also have more entrepreneurs and more startups that are had came in the market and they're still coming into the market. And obviously, what's happening with COVID is actually creating a boost to the technology sector. COVID have accelerated all technology trends, especially let's call it digital transformation, so that has also increased the interest in the technology sector overall. So now the second question you've asked is how do you raise money without meeting investors? It's a very important question because traditionally investors, they are used to meeting people before writing a check. So which means that you need to understand why they need to meet people, and it's primarily to build trust and to look at the business in more detail. But knowing that, what I recommend any future entrepreneurs is to really build up a strong KPIs before going to fundraise today, like be able to really prepare well, be ready. You have to work on your pitch deck, 57 times. That's the number of iteration we've done on our pitch deck, and really deliver a good result in your pitching, and so you have to practice that. You can't take that lightly today because everything is happening on video, and there's other ways that you can build trust with the VC. You can prepare a reference list that they can call upon to check who you are and your track record, and also because it's fundraising is becoming a remote fundraising process. There are a number of tools you can use to adapt to that. So, for instance, in our current fundraising process, we recorded videos that we sent to investors ahead of time. We created a teaser, like a one-page teaser, but also a deck and also a financial model to show that we know what we're doing and we can project the future, to increasing the trust with the team. And we've also, when we were doing through due diligence, we also used kind of asynchronous work tools like Notion, to provide a better experience for investors to consume these data, and all of that combined increases the trust that you build with the investor and eventually lead to a better outcome.
And how did you get convinced, like 10 years ago, who were the initial investors? Like, were they friends and family? And how much equity did you give away for 500K?
Good question. So they were a combination. So there was a small institutional investor that came in with another angel that I sourced. So one angel and one small institutional investor that put in the 500K, and in total, I think we valued the company at like 2.5 million at that time, which means they got less than 20% of the business.
Okay. And how did you raise it now? 4.2 million. What did you value the company at?
That's not public information.
Okay. Yeah.
But again, it's not very hard to guess that, because you don't want to dilute too much in the beginning. Let's say you take 20% dilution is like I would say 15 to 20% dilution would be market. So you can work out the numbers.
Okay, and the initial investors, like you got the investors 10 years ago, you were based in Switzerland. You think you know, like we're both working in an industry where we think that the world will be more equal, but if you're based out in Afghanistan and trying to raise that money, it's going to be a lot tougher than if you're based out in Geneva or Lausanne or you know, San Francisco. Was that
Yeah.
the case? I mean, would you have been able to raise that money from Lebanon?
No, the world is unequal when it comes to fundraising. That's a reality, and the world has been so far unequal. And if you are in the Silicon Valley, you have a higher chance, and then if you're Europe, you have a bit lower chance, but still high. And then if you're an emerging country, you have very little chance, right? So now the world is changing. Okay, so the world is changing because now the investor community are realizing that actually their own portfolio companies are going remote and building distributed teams and hiring people from all over the world. That's why we created Oyster anyway. And what what's going to happen, and it's probably not going to happen in the immediate term, but as these talent, let's say you're a great developer from Pakistan, and now instead of working for a small company in Pakistan, you're working for a hot startup in London or in New York, okay? So you're gonna work there for 4 or 5 years, grow, get plugged into the ecosystem of VC-backed companies, and then you'll be able to start a new company in Pakistan, and then you're much more credible to raise because you have the track record, you've worked for a VC-backed company in the past, you're probably connected to some of the VC community. So it's going to become much easier for you to raise money in 5 years from now. But I think to get there, we need to enable companies in the West to actually employ talent anywhere in the world, and then we can start breaking out this concentration of talent and money in very few expensive cities in the world, like San Francisco or London.
So talk me through your vision for Oyster HR. What's the company about? Why did you come up with it? You know, I really, because as a British Pakistani, I'm loving the concept. You know, an average university student in Pakistan, a graduate, will make £120 a month. And an average university graduate in London will make £2,000 a month. And I've always found that, you know, a shocking sort of statistic, but I can hire talent at £120 a month. And I've been outsourcing for like 15, 20 years now. So like, tell me your vision of Oyster HR. Where is it going to be in 1 year time, 2 years time, and why you guys are here?
Yeah, so we are here to lower cross-border employment challenges so that anyone anywhere in the world can have access to a great career. That's our mission. And to do so, we have to solve two problems. One is to build an employment infrastructure and a software platform that enables these companies to very easily and at scale administer employment in 10 or 100 countries. Okay, so remove the concept of country when you're employing people. Okay, that's one major challenge. The other challenge we're doing is we are enabling companies to become better distributed companies, how they can build an organization design and structure and leadership style and tooling to become more effective companies for a distributed workforce, and also enable people around the world to become better remote workers. Okay, so we're doing these two aspects at the same time. One is building the infrastructure and the software to make it super easy to hire anybody anywhere, but then enabling companies and people to become more efficient working in a distributed setting.
Awesome. So not only can you hire people, let's say in Pakistan or Lebanon or wherever it is, but you can also then, you have the software tools for them to coordinate better as well. Yes?
Yeah, like for instance, if you want to hire somebody in Pakistan, well, you need to send them a Pakistani employment contract. You need to talk to an employment lawyer. You have to have a local accountant, a payroll provider. You know, what kind of benefits do you want to give them in Pakistan? You have no clue if you're sitting in London, right? And you don't want to do that. So what you do is you go online, you put the name of the person, their email, their position detail, their salary. You click hire. It sends a local employment contract to that person in Pakistan. They are hired by a local entity, by Oyster, and then and then from an operational standpoint, you use our platform to manage the payroll, pay the benefits, and it's the same experience whether it's in 5 countries or 100 countries.
And why could you not just subcontract them? Like, let's say right now I have a team. Like, could I not just pay them as a subcontractor?
Yeah, it's a good question. So there's 2 modes of modality of engaging people. There's contractor and there's employment, full-time employment, and we support both. And we also we guide the employer to make the right choice between full-time employment and contractor. Now, in many developed countries, you have regulation that prevent employers to employ people as contractor. And the UK is a good example of that, because government believe that you're not compliant when it comes to your employment taxes. Now, in many emerging countries, that regulation is not there. So companies can, without taking any risk, employ somebody as a contractor. However, there are some countries where people want to be employed because they get some benefits from the government. They get social security coverage, they get health insurance, they get a pension. So what we do is really we guide our customer to make the right choice between full-time employment and contractor, and we support all employment modality.
Awesome, awesome. Thanks, Tony. I know you've got to rush off, but basically, where can people link to you and find out more about Oyster and what you're up to now?
Yeah, so if you go to oysterhr.com, this is our website, and for many of the students that we're targeting and you're talking about, then they can actually sign up and get trained on remote work. That's something we're providing for free. And also you can find me on LinkedIn.
Okay, and why the name Oyster, by the way? Oyster HR.
Because I'm sure you're familiar with this Shakespearean expression, the world is your oyster. And and it works both ways. It works for the companies because now they can tap into a very diverse and global talent pool, but it works also for the individual because now they are not bound by their local economy. The world, their oyster, they can find job anywhere.
Awesome. Tony Jamous, who sold his first company for $230 million, took it from 0 to 100 million within 5 years. And I'm sure this one will be the next unicorn and even have a bigger impact on the world. Check out Nexmo, or now it's a part of Vonage as well, just to see his previous work. Thanks a lot, Tony. Thanks for being on.